everyone said. We really appreciate everyone being here today. As we know, this is thank you. It takes a group effort. You know, it's really impressive to see where we've come as an organization since I've been involved. One of the things that we're going to talk about today that we've gotten a lot of feedback is, how sharp is your pencil? There's a lot of misconceptions about real estate development. Our goal today is to kind of dumb it down. We're going to go through a couple of scenarios that may or may not be realistic for our jurisdictions and our towns, but the idea is, we've heard a lot of feedback that people just don't understand how it works, and they think, is it all about greed of a landlord? Is it all because a policy's not in place? I opened up this conference by stating that we needed to have everybody's buy-in. We need, as a community, to have the right policies, the right types of development. So again, the purpose of Craig and I being up here is kind of walk you through it. So we're going to start with a little participation. I want to see by show of hands, how many people think they know what a pro forma is? Okay. How many people have done a pro forma and built something? Brian Johnson, I like it. There we go, buddy. Okay. How many of you know what an investment is? And how many people think that investing in your community is something of building equity and that would make our community a better place? Anybody who doesn't agree with that? Okay. So the goal today is kind of, like I said, a very broken down, easy version of the real estate. And I think that when we're going through this, there's going to be some scenarios that may be in our current interest rate environment, our current financial environment. There may not be. If you've got questions, we'll have some Q&A at the end. But again, the goal is for us to go through this, have you understand how challenging it can be or how beneficial it can be. And then at the end, we'll close out and see if you guys are ready to build a project. Sound good? Okay.
Let's do this.
All right, let's do it.
Well, it's going to be fun. I mean,
it's one way to say it.
Something's going to happen. We're either going to captivate them or we're going to bore them with a bunch of numbers. That's pretty much what's going to happen. So,
story of my life.
Okay, so we're going to have some fun with this. Again, John said we're trying to take what is a rather complicated financial model and try to keep it as skinny down to try to get our points across as best as possible. So I'm going to kind of start with a scenario. And I had a grandma, Nancy. She's a great grandma. She loved me. I loved her. Unfortunately, she's not with us. But let's say that Grandma Nancy left me a piece of land, right? And she left me a little bit of money. God
How
bless
much?
you. I don't know yet, John. But,
okay.
you know, she left me something. And she kind of said, hey, Craig, you know, I want you to build a house for you or rental or something, like do something productive with it. So I'm going to use that scenario to kind of walk you through a pro forma. And so in a pro forma, a really skinny down pro forma, we're going to have some inputs, right? So we're going to have the units, and then we're going to have kind of the costs, right? And in this scenario, I've got 1 acre of land. Grandma told me to build a house there, and I'm going to keep it real simple. So I'm going to build 1 unit, and I'm going to build a 1,000 square foot unit in this case. And so that's great. That's my plan. I have to start looking at my costs, and these are my inputs, right? And so when I talk about cost, I have A, B, C, and D in this scenario. So I have the cost of the land. I've got the cost of the design consultants. I've got the cost permits and fees, and I've got construction costs, right? I got to build the thing. And so for my 1 unit, these may or may not represent actual costs, which is my disclaimer, but I think they're going to be pretty darn close. So let's kind of walk through this. So I go to John, I say, John, Grandma left me this, I want to build this unit. What's the financial model look like? Okay, so we're gonna not even count the land, right? Because Grandma gave it to me, it keeps my model simple. And if I put it in there, the numbers look horrible. So I get the land for free.
So to clarify, we're not even buying land yet.
Not even buying land. Okay.
So we're given the land.
Okay. So I'm building my 1 unit. I've got to hire our engineers. I've got to hire architects. They're going to take me through 2 phases, usually entitlement. So I'm going to get some sort of land use permit for my house, and then they're going to do construction drawings. That's actually drawings that were consistent with the California Building Code. Gets my building permit. So, generally, let's just say for entitlement, they're gonna charge me $20,000, and for construction drawings, they're gonna charge me $30,000. So I've got $50,000 and some design fees. Let's say I'm doing this in the county or the city. I've got to process a permit, and so there's going to be some staff time they're going to charge me. There's going to be some fees, impact fees I have to pay, school fees, right? I'm generating more school needs, or I'm generating more sewer needs or water needs, and so there's fees associated with that. And then when I get around to building my structure, there's building fees associated with that. So in this scenario, my 1,000 square foot, 1 unit on 1 acre land is about $30,000. Okay, so now I got construction costs, right? And these are the nails, the framing, and in a simple term, I got those into 3. Site work and utilities. Underground, I got to run the water line, I got to run electrical, I got to get a driveway. Slab up cost. These are generally the slab of the house that I'm building, and
The footprint.
and everything up, right? The framing, the electrical, the roof, and then I've got landscape, right? I'm going to put some trees in, I got maybe some turf, so I'm not using a lot of water.
What about a pool?
No, not yet,
Okay.
John. I mean,
All right.
maybe I'll get a little fire pit or something. That'd be cool. Okay, so if I'm generally close to that, I've got a cost that is $580,000, excluding land. I didn't even put land in that. Okay, so those are my inputs. Let's start looking, and again, if you guys can't see this, just tell me to blow it up. Blow it up. Okay. Okay, let's blow it up. I think that's about as good as I can do. Okay, let's walk you through a dumbed-down version of a pro forma. I've got cost to build, $580,000. Okay, I don't have $580,000 in my pocket, so very similar to going and getting a car or a mortgage or buying a new boat.
Got to find a banker.
Got to find a banker. So I go to a banker, and the banker says, okay, well, hey, that seems like a good project. We're in the business of lending construction loans. We're happy to help you out, Craig, but I can't give you 100% of it. I'll give you 65% of your $580,000 that you need. So the bank says, I'll give you $377,000. And I say, thank you, great, that's useful. No one does anything for free, so they're going to charge me an interest rate. In this scenario, it's 6%. I thought I'd see some oranges.
Yeah, I mean,
apples
you guys
thrown
can't.
at
You
me
guys aren't
or
seeing
like something.
65%, 6%. No.
65% is generous in this environment too, I think. So,
And on that point, I think it's important to stop. This is again not the current environment we're in. So to really understand, you can't get this loan.
Okay.
I think that's
all
important.
right, so let's keep going. So anyway, I get that deal, and the bank tells me, okay, great, you're gonna my monthly payment. So when I amortize that, it's a fully amortized loan. In this scenario, it's 30 years. I'm going to have a mortgage payment of $2,260. Okay, now remember, again, they didn't give me 100%. I got to come up with 35% of my $580,000 project. So that means I got to have some equity requirement. I got to have $200,000 in my pocket. Now, luckily, Grandma left that for me. She left me the land and a little bit of cash. So I think I can get this thing done. Okay, so I was renting before. Now I'm not going to, but I just don't want to. I still need to figure out, like, if I was looking at this from investment, like, okay, is this a good investment? So I kind of know my costs are, market rent. If I was to kind of charge myself, if you will, to figure out my income. Let's say that 1 bedroom that I built I'd rent it to myself at $3,500.
1,000 square feet for $3,500 bucks
That's
on an acre.
3.5. Yeah, no,
Pretty
it's very
nice.
low,
That's a
I
good
would say,
deal.
because
Oh, okay.
it's $3.50 a
I'm
square
liking
foot.
this. I'm liking this.
I think market
this
rate's
is-
more in the
I'm
fives.
liking Grandma Nancy. This is good.
Okay, so as the investor, I'd also say, okay, well, I'm going to get $3,500 a month from me, but I'm going to have costs. Right now, I have property taxes. I've got
Insurance.
I've got
Maintenance.
I got it.
Utilities.
Someone's got to do the gardening. If I'm not going to do it, so those are typically called operating expenses, and typically they hover in the 35%. And I know every developer is trying to drive that down, but they're going to be about 35%. So I lose that. So when I take my income, my 3,500, and I take out my operating, I get to a net income of 2,275. Remember, I still owe the bank that. They need their 2,260 every month. So when I calculate all that, and I take out my debt service, I get to a cash flow after debt service of $15. It's a return on equity. I don't know if you guys can see that, but developers will tell you that's a key term. Return on equity, in this case, is 0.1%. Okay?
How many of you are getting 0.1% in your treasury bonds or high interest yield savings accounts now? Getting a little more, probably.
Okay. So, again, grandma left it to me. I'm going to get a house out of it. There's benefits. So, but I remember that grandma said, "Hey, Craig, I think it's zoned for something more than one unit." And so John tells me, "Well, we can look at that. If you want to kind of make a better investment, let's look at that." Okay. Let's say I do 10 units on that property, and I'll go through this a little quicker. But now I got that 1 acre property. I'm going to do 10 units. They're going to be 1,000 square foot units. I got to show you over here. This is where it gets a little complicated. I'm still going to have these same costs, right? Land, I'm not even going to account for it, but I still have design costs. Now, I think I'm going to get some economy of scale here. I'm going to go to my engineer and say, "Hey, you're going to design the same unit. I'm just going to build 10 of them effectively." So there should be some economy of scale. I know it's more work for you guys, but your cost should be lower because there's economy of scale. And so where I was spending $50,000 for my 1 unit, let's say I can spend $10,000 per unit for my 10 units that I want to build. So I think my design costs are clearly going to go up, but they're not going to go up proportionally to the 9 more units that I'm building. So my design cost in this scenario is $100,000. It was $50,000 in my 1 unit. Same concept with permits and fees. It's incremental. The staff person says, "Yeah, it's a little more work, but I still have to do the same stuff." My impact fees are going to go up. More school fees I have to pay for. I'm having a bigger impact on sewer and water and electricity and all that. So, but I think I can do better at a per unit basis. So over here, remember my 1 unit, my permits and fees were about $30,000 per unit. Over here, my 10 scenario, I think I can drive that down to almost half, right? $16,000 per unit. So I ended up with $165,000 permits and fees. It was 30 here. Same concept with construction costs, right? I get some economies of scale, and in other scenarios I don't. And so I look at this and I say, okay, if I build 10 units, I think I can do that at about $450,000 a unit compared to the $580,000 it cost me for my 1 unit. So, okay, John, I killed it, right? This is what I needed to do. So John kind of walks me through the pro forma, and he says, "Well, you're doing better, Craig. It's going to cost you $4.5 million to build it. The bank's going to give you what they're going to give you. You got a $17,000 mortgage. I hope Grandma left you a big equity number, because you got to come up. You have 1.5 in your pocket, right, Craig?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, John. Maybe. Let's
be real. How much money did Grandma leave you? Because this is getting really interesting."
I don't know. You're making me uncomfortable.
Okay, well, we're here for work. Let's get comfortable.
Grandma left me $1.582 million, right? $1.5 million. So I can do this deal.
Okay.
Okay. So, but it's going to take all my money I have. Okay. My income is, again, the $3,500 a month. I got my operating expenses. I got my net income, my mortgage I pay, cash flow after debt service. You run the calc. My return on equity invested has now gone from the 0.1 to the 3.22. So, better.
Again, how many of you are doing better than 3.25 for doing nothing? See a lot of yeses.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an interesting concept to think about.
Okay.
If you can do nothing
Okay.
and do better.
So then, some pro-housing policy comes along. Oop, I don't
Pro-housing policy.
policy, yeah. And so we started saying, okay, well, geez, 10 units isn't that great. You know, geez, maybe I can get 20 units on there, right? And so we started exploring 20 units. 20 units, same 1,000 square foot units. You know, I go to the engineers and architects, and they say, hey, look, you know, it's getting a little more complicated, right? You still got this same acre of land. I got to get a lot more on there, so I got to, you know, my design costs are going to be more because, like, you know, maybe it's 2 stories, maybe I've got to do some bridges or some certain stormwater management. So, hey, it's going to be a little bit more money. It's going to be more money per unit, but, you know, not that much more. But it is more complicated. And I say, yeah, you're right. You're getting 20 units on there where it was 1 before. Staff kind of says the same thing to me. Hey, you know, your processing fee's not going to be any more because we're kind of doing the same thing, but my impact fees go up, my building permit fees go up. Again, I'm probably maybe slightly better at my per unit basis for 20 units than I am at 10, let's say. Some economy of scale.
Okay, let's get to the good part. How much money did Grandma leave you?
Okay.
We get it. The economies of scale.
Okay, I worked in my construction costs, and now I can build this unit. I can build my 20 units at $400,000 per unit. And again, remember when I was doing 10, they were costing me about $450,000. So still doing better, right? I'm building these things for cheaper, and I'm getting more of them on my land. Okay,
Oof.
here we go. Cost me $8 million to build. I got to have 2.7 in my pocket. At the end of the day, I got a 5.15 return.
Okay, we're getting probably a little closer to what you're getting right now. That makes sense.
I mean, it makes me think about, geez, you know, why wouldn't I do this?
So,
right, John? I mean, not bad.
Yeah, but let's kind of bring this back now to why we're here, workforce housing. So,
Okay. Well, what I want to.
no, but I'll get there. I'm just
Okay.
saying. So, you've got 3,500 is making 70 grand.
That's right.
Okay. Well,
Right.
I want to provide some more affordable for our workforce. What happens? Grandma Nancy, she says, you know what, Craig, I left you a lot of money. I want you to do something impactful for our community.
Sure.
Let's say, can you change these numbers? Do these things change?
Yeah, I can
Okay.
change it.
So let's say your average rent goes down to $3,000.
$3,000 for my 20 units.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, let's not do that, John. I could cut my return in half, dude. I can't do that. Maybe I can do 3,200. How's that?
Okay, that's not going to work.
That's not going to work too. So, okay, I'm going to go 3,300. Might be able to live with that, and I'm doing something good, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know anyone that's going to do that deal.
Let's just assume I do that. So I'm generally okay with my 4.2, and I kind of go at it, and I get into it, and this is kind of what I think I'm going to do. And I get along the way and start getting some opposition. I thought the project was going to take 14 months, and get some neighbors not liking me, or some certain agencies that, you know, don't like what I'm doing, and I have to do some more studies. And so what I thought was going to take me 14 months, now I'm on month 16. You know, my design consultants had said, Craig, this is taking longer than, you know, we had thought. And so, you know, my cost for those folks go up. You know, in the meantime, the banking environment's kind of changed, and I thought I had a 6%, you know, I thought I had a 6% rate, and, you know, my 6% rate goes to 6.25, and so I'm in this, and kind of getting these small little hits, and here my pro forma's falling again.
Doesn't pencil.
Okay, and then it keeps going along, and, you know, I get, oh, gosh, geez, there was another fee that I didn't think I had to hit, and now my fees kind of went up by, you know, another $50,000, or, you know, someone sues me, and now I got to hire an attorney, and this number jumps up to, you know, $200,000. So when I started 14 months ago and thought I was going to get a 5.15% return, now I'm at 3.6. And those are just some of the hits. I'm not even done with the project. I'm actually halfway through. I've sunk in all this money. And I'm really starting to question why I did that in the first place.
And what an interesting concept. I mean, that, like, you think of someone who's willing to take a risk as a developer, and they may not have all the answers, they may not have all the right reasoning, but it's for an investment. When we started, we said, hey, how many of you guys have invested? And the reality is, for something to pencil, it's really, really hard. This is free land. These are an interest rate environment that all you hear about is changing interest rates, a loan banking industry that's in shambles, construction, everything's up. So my question to our audience, and kind of the forefront of this, is what's the answer? It's not you just build more units. You're not going to have, that's one answer. You can make a higher return for more units. Inclusionary is something that is really interesting because that's going to help somewhat, but we all know inclusionary isn't going to be the sole answer. In my personal opinion, and this is just me talking as an individual, not on behalf of CHC, but it goes back to that community. There's a lot of facets that have to come into this to make it pencil.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's our policies, it's our developers, it's the workforce, it's everyone working together. And what's really interesting is how are we gonna get out of this? Steve talked about a hole that's been dug. We've got Assemblymember Ward who's on the state level talking, but locally we really have some unique opportunities. You guys are probably all following the county housing element, and these rezones that are coming up. You're following builders' remedies projects, you're following projects in your town, and it's very interesting for me and I think for our board to have these conversations, but with time that there's got to be some real solutions.
Yeah, and that was the end of my presentation because I started having some technical difficulties. But, hopefully that was helpful. Again, I wanted the audience to kind of understand how a pro forma works. And again, John, I think when it comes down to it, I'm good, Gavin. You've got a lot of factors that are happening, right? Costs, right? If construction costs are going up, time and risk, if it takes longer than when you anticipated, leverage, the banking industry. So all these things are happening actively while you're going along the development path. And, if and when a lot of those stars don't align, you could end up with a project that is not buildable. And then, quite frankly, not only does that developer lose, but in the case if they were building, housing that we needed, nothing gets built.
I'm curious. If you had Grandma Nancy, show of hands, besides you, Matt Taylor, we know the answer is yes. If you guys had a Grandma Nancy, how many of you would develop a project? I got one hand. Oh, seal. All right, a planning. Okay, I have one hand, a half a hand. Deddy, I see. Okay. Barry's kind of. Okay. That's interesting, right? That's a real interest. So we had 5 hands go up. Even if you had Grandma Nancy, $2.8 million in the bank, land, all that, you probably would say, I'm going to put that money in treasuries, I'm going to put that in a high deal interest rate, do nothing, and sit back and make some money. I think that's a really interesting concept, and I think the other side of this is, again, it goes back to the solutions. It's not just about the building. There's so many different factors, and I think when we look to sharpen the pencil, it's not just on the developer side. Right? There's a handful of areas that we can sharpen our pencils.
Yeah, I wish we had a silver bullet. I wish we could sit in this conference and tell you here's the 3 solutions we need to do. But I think the fact of the matter is we have to work as a community, and we have to understand that the end goal, there's a lot of things that need to line up. The pencils have to be sharp. It's not one pencil, it's multiple pencils that have to be sharp. And they need to work out to make these housing projects work. And again, if we're, artificially or intentionally adding barriers to that, they're not going to happen. And so I think that's really where it's important about we know what policies we're requiring of these projects. We provide them a known time frame that is dependable and reduces their risk.
And in return, developers should be in a position of like, let's build the right type of housing.
Absolutely.
Because we just saw from a very simple thing, the only way we have really high market rate is because that's the only way it can make a little bit of sense. You're basically baking in long-term appreciation maybe, but we're gonna, as a community, gonna continue to lose people because they're like, I'm not going through all this risk. There's 5 of you who raised your hands, minus Matt Taylor. I see you, Matt, raising your hand. Well, we know. But the problem is if we have no one doing it, that's the real problem. So it's, I think that's kind of where for my involvement with the CHC, your guys' involvement being here, I mean, this is really what it's about. And if you're not on the development side, what role do you have? Are you a policymaker? Are you someone who has a policymaker's ear? Are you someone who works for a design company? Are you someone who works for a contractor? Trying to figure out how can we do this? We all know we're never going to build our way out of the current situation. That's not the answer. However, I think everyone in this room, if they knew that we had our workforce for purposes of this definition, firefighters, police officers, nurses, tech workers, people who work for our municipalities, people who are here who want to be here or have their children in our schools, teachers, people who are having to commute in. We're not going to do everyone, but as a father of 3 young kids, I can tell you that when my youngest is at the age of 5th, 6th grade is elementary school, I don't know what we're going to do for teachers who can't afford to live here, and they're going to get paid to do it. So the time is now, and whether it happens or not, a lot of people maybe already have their home, they already have their rental, but I'm encouraged by the fact, by all of you still here, and the fact of you're coming out today, that you want to make a solution. And the reality of we've learned in the last 50 years, the solution is not to do nothing. That is very clear.
Yeah.
And we're not going to get anywhere if we do that.
Yeah. So with that, thank you for giving us your attention. John thanks you, and Grandma Nancy thanks you.
Yeah.
So I could put this back up on screen possibly, but we're happy to take questions that you may have.
Yeah. We'll get you a mic in a sec. What role do tax incentives have?
Yeah,
I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, I think the question was, what role do tax incentives have in the pro forma model? They're huge, quite frankly. I mean, when you talk about that equity that I needed, that Grandma left me, that's going to come from tax incentives. The capital that pro formas need to do anything come from those sources. And like our friends at the housing authorities, that's how a lot of our affordable housing is built, is that there are pools of funds that those projects have access to.
In addition, there's no property taxes paid. So that expense of that 35%, if you're doing the affordable, their costs go down.
Yeah. So they're huge. But again, they're not always available to every developer. They're not always applicable to every project. There is a process for that. It's not guaranteed. There's certain timing that has to happen with getting tax incentives and access to other kind of grant and subsidized monies. So that's a whole nother element that even if I'm just figuring out how to do this, if I was getting tax incentives and subsidies, I'd kind of have to manage, my applications and how I get to that money. So it's helpful, but it's not going to be for everyone.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. One of the things on the pro forma that was a big chunk in there was the operating expenses. Can you talk about what goes into those operating expenses? Surely there's the property taxes, there's property management. Do those operating expenses also have economies of scale? And if so, what sorts of projects do you see that make that work better?
Yeah, so the 35% number was 35% of what the gross rental income is. You're spot on. The big ones are your property taxes, which in the city of Santa Barbara is 1.07%. Somewhere in there, GLEDA changes a little bit. You've got insurance. I don't know if any of you have gotten policies either on your business, your car, your home. The insurance situation in California, it's a whole nother animal. Property management. Property management has gotten a lot more challenging for property. There's a lot of new laws. There's a lot of new policies that are being put in place. Some I think are great. Some are going to be interesting. Those costs, everything's going up. Maintenance, everything goes under there. You've got to have somebody who can come fix something. You actually have to pay to fix something.
If I got a unit that turns and
a unit turn, you have a vacant.
Someone trashed my unit,
Yeah.
and I've got to spend $2,000 to get it repainted and carpets replaced and stuff.
Vacancy factor.
Yeah.
It's not gonna. You're not gonna lease overnight. We're seeing some softening on the rentals. It's finally kind of coming back down to earth. There's a slew of them that kind of make up that 35%. I think some larger developers are able to operate on the lower operating expenses. So you look at some of the larger developers. I guess we can use, who's a large developer in town that's current?
Property management.
Yeah, they're economies of scale that they can do it for less. I think the real challenge is those are all moving pieces. You have to continue to pay your employees more. You have to continue to change. So those expenses go up.
Yeah.
But from a development standpoint, there's a lot of undertaking that goes in those operating expenses. If you want a real detailed version, I can get you one if it really line items, and 35% is safe. It's again, I think the key.
It's close.
Yeah, the key for workforce, which is what we're defining as 120 to 200% of AMI of income, is that property tax bill, which is great. We need property taxes. We need that money, but that's a huge undertaking, and you have to pay that every single year, regardless of if you have people in there or not. Inclusionary. Good program, important, but you start demanding what units can be, it's going to affect that. So that's why when you see projects, there's numerous projects that are in the city of Santa Barbara where I know for a fact the developer would have built more, would have given more units, inclusionary workforce, but they were shot down. The size, bulk, and scale was not compatible with where it was. So that's something that there's a big disconnect of where it is. And I'm not saying that you need to have these massive towers and change the ambience of Santa Barbara. We're going to see a lot of this with the rezoning in Goleta. But again, if we do nothing, I don't know anyone else, but I don't see home prices really coming down. I don't see it being less expensive to get a mortgage in the near future, so there's got to be something.
Any other questions?
I have more of an appreciation. I just wanted to say thank you for running through one of these pro formas because Deddy Pikert is the first person that taught me about this. And it helped me as a planner really learn about what it takes to develop and what kind of impact policies and programs that we adopt at local jurisdictions have on those projects. Even our development impact fees, they are substantial and can really either make or break a project. So I just really appreciate it. And I want to remember the first developer I knew that actually opened his pro forma to the city of Santa Barbara and to the county was Mike Tobes. And in that day, this is 20 years ago, everybody accepted that 15% was supposed to be the profit. And we are looking at a much different scenario today, and it's much harder to develop. So it's true that I think we all have to work cooperatively and be aware of what challenges are presented to actually getting housing on the ground and housing at the prices that we want and need to house the members of our community. So I just wanted to say thank you for the work you did today.
I appreciate it, Lisa. And that's a good, that wasn't staged. But I'm really glad that you said that because John and I, in coordinating for this, we said, look, we're happy to dive into this deeper. I mean, if there's any, staff members out there or any of you want to dive into this deeper and understand it,
And
more than the 30 minutes I had to explain it, we'd be happy to do that on behalf of the Coastal Housing Coalition.
And again, I think the idea too is most developers who truly care about our community and that are doing this, they'd also be open to doing it as long as it's an open conversation. So again, it comes back to the idea of us as a community. Are we going to do nothing? Or are we going to continue to be divided? There's no one solution on it. Any other questions? Oh, right here, Wes.
Hi, thank you again. I also want to thank you. I'm James Kiriako, City of Goleta. We actually just did our rezones on Tuesday, including some open spaces, vacant lands, a couple of storage facilities, a commercial office building, a diversity of different types of land uses, but essentially almost all of them are infill, so they won't be sprawl-inducing. So really glad to be done with that process. But I just really want to thank you because when you come into this work, it's really easy for certain narratives to kind of take hold. And one of the narratives is, God, developers are just making millions and millions and millions of dollars. And when you see the rents and you see what housing prices are going for, it's really easy to fall into the trap of thinking that this is really driven by greed or avarice or other adjectives that I won't share in a family space. So I really just want to thank you for the work that you're doing and for helping to open up some eyes throughout the South Coast.
Thank you.
Thank you for that comment.
I think behind you, Wes.
Thank you. Ellen Bildston, architect. So John and Craig, you posed the pro forma taking out the cost of land. And I'm guessing you did that just so that there was some margin of profit, because I suppose there would have never been any, and it would have been a negative proposition if land had been part of the equation. And by your nodding, I think we're onto something there. But I'm wondering, I mean, along the lines of what you said about a community commitment to housing, whether we start to look at the challenge of figuring out how to do public-private partnerships to get housing done, just, taking note that there are some significant pieces of land downtown in Santa Barbara that are city-owned and used as parking lots that perhaps could be leveraged into more usable development that might still incorporate parking lots, but might have housing on upper floors. So just, musing as you posed the variety of information that you presented, some of the opportunities that we collectively in this room might have to realize some projects, and, who is grandma?
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Who is Grandma Nancy?
Ellen, I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, if we put in land,
I like that. Who is Grandma Nancy?
Who's Grandma Nancy?
Who is Grandma Nancy? Is anyone in this room Grandma Nancy?
But you're right. I mean, to make a project work, probably means that the owner has owned the land for a long time, or maybe there's opportunities in, like you said, church sites, where the owner can contribute the land, right? And, can maybe be part of the deal. I mean, that happens all the time. You have a landowner that contributes the land and they become part of the real estate deal. And that makes it work. If you have to go out and buy land speculatively, hoping that I can get my 20 units, and now I've sunk in, $4 million on my land, that's going to be a big risk. And not to mention how many, vacant pieces of, they're not they're not available that much. So you bring up a very good point that, I think when we look at land and the availability and how you even factor that in, there are opportunities out there, and then we're going to have to use those as a community.
One more? We'll do one more.
Hi. I hope this question isn't too controversial, but having just grown up and lived in a big city all my life, I have to ask this question. Sometimes, I guess, development, part of the advantage of living in like a suburban area is that you get a little bit more of a choice of who your neighbors are. When you develop a kind of a housing project, you sometimes don't have that choice. And so the proximity of your neighbors becomes kind of something that you have to consider. So the choice of whether to develop a kind of a high-end, so to speak, development versus kind of something that's a little bit more affordable, regardless of whether the affordable requirement is a requirement for the development, kind of automatically sets the tone, in my opinion, for kind of, well, like how that community is actually gonna be affected from a demographic perspective. So my question is, like, you know, irrespective of the numbers in your pro forma, does that ever become part of your equation? Like, what kind of people do you want either renting or buying from you?
Me or you?
Well, go for it.
I mean, it's an interesting question, and again, I have to digest it a little bit, but
I mean, the response is whether you believe, does everyone have a right to live in Santa Barbara? And my personal answer is yes. However, how is that right given? Is it because you've worked hard? Is it because you're from here, from with family? You were given, Grandma Nancy gave you $5 million? And that's exactly where, as a community, who are we? I don't think we have that identity. So you're spot on that a lot of the developments are like, who can afford a $4,000 studio? Who can do that?
And I think the answer to how I'd answer your question is, you know, that is still needed. I mean, we still need planning. We still need to work as a community to figure out where this stuff's going to go and what it should look like, and you know, what are the height restraints and what the sizable and scale constraints should be. But once those are established, and once those are in the guiding documents, a developer should not, that should be like the Bible, I don't know, but that should be guaranteed for them. There shouldn't be any question about it. Once the design standards get written and they're adhering to those, the permitting process needs to be easy. But because when it isn't, that is when, again, the project went from 14 months to 18 months to 22 months and, you know, becomes financially infeasible. So my answer is that still needs to happen. We need to know what is going to go where. But once once that's in place, there should be that guarantee that I could build that project and reduce the risk.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll end with a friend of mine and a wise man said, you know, is Santa Barbara going to turn into Monaco? And has anyone been to Monaco? I don't want to be the only one to raise my hand, but okay. So Monaco is known for like the yacht capital, where you have the ultra, ultra, ultra wealthy and everyone who works for them. And as somebody personally who's been here 20 years and raising a family, I don't want Santa Barbara to be Monaco. So I think to kind of go back to your question is, who are we developing for? We need to develop for everybody. And I think as a community, my personal opinion, we do a really good job for people who are really struggling financially. There's not enough housing. And for this group, now the problem is you make too much to not qualify for those subsidies, but you don't make enough to qualify for buying or having equity in this community. So what do you do? And that's where we're losing the people in this community and the people that we need to keep. And that is personally the type of housing
because
that we're
they
going
are
there.
the backbone of the economy.
And it comes back down to, what do we want? Like, what do we want? We can keep going down the same track, or we can try to make a difference. Okay, that's all I've got.
That's all we
They're
got.
done with me. I'm
I
done.
think we bored them. So.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you guys all for coming to this year's housing conference. I'll leave you with this. If you want to get more involved, if you want to learn anything more we talked about today, please reach out. And again, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Have a great day. Thank you.